Hey guys, this is going to be I say the hard part, but the harder part of what we're doing. Now let's imagine for a second I didn't give you this function here. So I only gave you the log function and I asked you to graph it. What you would first need to do is figure out what this function is. And the way you would do that is by finding the inverse of this function. And so I'm going to show you how you do that. The first thing you do, if you remember when we did inverses, the first thing we did was we made f of x equal y, but they've already written y here, so that's fine. And then the second thing we did was switch x and y. So I'm actually going to rewrite this as x equals log base 2 of y. So we just switch the x and y. So that's step number one, switch the x and y, okay? And then the next thing you're going to do is rewrite it. And this is what we did a while back when we did logs. Again, you could have put the equals x over here. But if I rewrite it, this would be 2 to the x power equals y. So let me rewrite this actually before, like, if I put the equals x over here, this will probably make more sense since we've done it like that before, so I'm going to kind of erase that. So if I want to rewrite this, it would be 2 to the x power equals y. So 2 to the x power equals y. So your first step is to switch the x and y, which we did. The second step is to rewrite it, and then the third step is to get y by itself. Well, notice we already, oops, didn't mean to do that. Notice we already have y by itself, so we're done. And you'll notice that this matches this. But let's do one that's a little bit more difficult. So if we look at this one, notice I didn't give you this equation at all. So we got to first figure out what that is. And so the first thing I'm going to do is switch the x and y. So we get x equals log base 2 of x plus 1. So that's your first step. Switch the x and y. Oops, that should be a y. My bad. Y plus 1. Forgive my it's kind of unorganized or whatever, or not unorganized, but it doesn't look good. Anyway, so the first thing we do is we switch the x and y, and then the second thing we do is rewrite it. So 2 to the x power would equal y plus 1. Now, let me say something right here. If we would have had something else here, like a minus 2, we would have to first move that over before we rewrite it. So it's kind of the same way. We can only rewrite it if all we have is a log. So there are times when we have to move something first. So let me see if there's an example down here. Yeah. So like down here, when I do this, I would first, so let me actually just do this one. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I just want to show you what your first step would be. So log base 0.5 of y plus 1 plus 2. So before I rewrite it, so before I rewrite this, I would subtract 2. So we would get x minus 2 equals log base 0.5 to the y plus 1. And I'm just going to cut off here. And then I would rewrite it. So it'd be 0.5 to this power equals y plus 1. Okay, but I'm not going to finish that, but I did want you to at least see that there. But this is more like the problem you're going to have to do. So the first thing I did was switch the x and y, and then I rewrite it. 2 to the x power equals y plus 1. So 2 to the x power equals y plus 1. So first step, switch the x and y. Second step, I would say second step is to get the log by itself, which in this case it already is. And then third step, rewrite. And then the fourth step is get the y by itself. So we would have to subtract 1 from both sides. So y equals 2 to the x minus 1. So the 2 to the x minus 1 would be what goes here. And then once you get to this point, that's when you graph this. So we would do, that's when we'd start over to where we've been doing for the last little while. We would graph this and then graph this. Okay, so we can't really graph a log. I mean, we can, but it's easier to find its inverse and then go from there. And so, so step 1, and let me do this. I'll go down here and actually finish this one. Step 1 is you switch the x and y. So the x and y switch. That's your first step. Step 2, get the log alone. Okay, so that's what we did when we subtracted 2 here from both sides. We got the log by itself. So because this whole thing here is part of the log, and then this plus 2 is not part of the log. So we move that over. Then step 3 is to rewrite in exponential form. And I'm just going to put rewrite. So rewrite in exponential form. So the way this would look is 0.5 to that exponent equals y plus 1. So 0.5, so 0.5 to the power of x minus 2 equals y plus 1. And then step 4 is to get the y by itself. So get the y alone. I know this is a little bit ugly, but that's okay. So we would subtract 1 from both sides. So we've done this before, just not with these types of functions. 0.5 to the x minus 2 minus 1. And here's what you'll recognize, guys. These numbers just change. Minus 2, minus 1. And we still have the same base, all that. So sometimes it's easy to recognize, especially since we're doing online, questions. It'd be easy to recognize if it was multiple choice. But I may not give you all multiple choice. So hopefully this helps. Please let me know if you have any more questions.